Whatever happened to the Fly reboot inside the new Fly Universe movie? As an avid horror fan, I feel some movies should never fade, and one big example of that is David Cronenberg's 1986 version of The Fly. Every single time I watch that film, and that is more times than I can count, the slow and hideous unraveling of Jeff Goldblum's Seth Brundle into something inhuman is still as unsettling as ever. When I started hearing rumors about a new Fly project, I got hyped at first, only for those whispers to go completely silent for years. I needed to know what actually happened, because it is about time we get treated with something new from this universe. So let me take you through what happened. The original 1958 movie, with its campy nightmare vibe, was disturbing for its era, but Cronenberg's remake became the real landmark. It took a simple sci-fi horror idea and turned it into a love story about illness, bodily decay, and the pain of watching someone you love slowly change until they become unrecognizable. The movie worked so well, especially because of the brilliant performances by Jeff Goldblum, who played scientist Seth Brundle, and Gina Davis, who played journalist Veronica Quaife. I also have to talk about the makeup and effects, which were so well done that Chris Wallace and Stefan Dupuis won the Academy Award for Best Makeup. The film earned about $60.6 million worldwide, against a reported budget usually cited in the $9 to $15 million range. You can see that it was quite the sensation, and it also made Cronenberg's version one of the defining body horror films in Hollywood. Inevitably, the studio wanted more, and we got a sequel in 1989, The Fly 2, with Eric Stoltz playing Martin Brundle, the son of Seth Brundle and Veronica Quaife. This time, Chris Wallace was behind the camera, and the movie ended up being gorier and less loved than the first one. In fact, I tend to overlook it myself. The real sacred text for many of us was always Cronenberg's film, and we have been questioning what comes next ever since. Oh, and here's a fun one. Howard Shore, the same composer who scored Cronenberg's original, composed a full opera adaptation of The Fly, with a libretto by David Henry Hwang, and Cronenberg himself directed it. The opera premiered at Théâtre du Châtelet in Paris on July 2, 2008, and later reached Los Angeles Opera in September 2008. So even in the years when there was no film news, this property was finding ways to stay alive. Horror icons like that do not just go away. I mean, there is Evil Dead, which keeps getting revived, then Hellraiser, and even Candyman got a belated sequel after many years. So I knew someone would eventually circle back to The Fly, but I was curious about who was going to do it, and what shape it would take when they did. Back in the 2000s, there were early talks and rumors about a remake, but those conversations bounced around for years without going anywhere. Then there was a report in the late 2000s that Cronenberg himself was developing a follow-up, and that definitely got everyone's attention. It was not going to be a remake of his own film or a standard direct sequel. He described it publicly as more of a strange, lateral, let's say oblique sequel than a true sequel, and certainly not a remake of the original. If Fox, which had financed the script, had given it the go-ahead, then Cronenberg could have officially returned to the universe. He later elaborated further, describing the concept as a meditation on flyness. The characters would have been different, but the film would still have focused on the dangers of technology and the horror of transformation. As he put it in an interview, it wasn't really a remake, it was more of a sequel or a sidebar. It was something I was very pleased with, and it was a disappointment not to get it made. Sit with me for a second here, because the man who made the legendary version of this story actually wrote a script to return to that world and was paid by the studio to do it. That is real commitment, right? Yet, it went nowhere. The project faced what Cronenberg called budget constraints and other issues, and he acknowledged that his script may have been too much for the studio. You know how studios mostly greenlight movies by traditional standards? What Cronenberg had written was not a sequel in any conventional sense. By 2012, he was indicating to journalists that it seemed like it was not going to happen. And he moved on. We were left dispirited, though, because there was not even a big dramatic cancellation announcement. I woke up one day and realized the updates had stopped a long time ago, and I had not even noticed. Also, the mid-2010s were difficult years for mid-budget R-rated films aimed at adult audiences. For a big studio looking for a safe box office hit, Cronenberg's vision was probably too strange and expensive. Add to this the issue of corporate shifts, mergers, and changing studio leadership, and it becomes easier to understand why this project had a hard time getting approved. So the new Fly we heard about in the late 2000s and early 2010s was very much real, but it died quietly when the studio decided that the risk was not worth it. But do not lose hope yet, because in November 2024, Deadline announced that a new film set in the universe of Cronenberg's The Fly was in development at 20th Century Studios and Chernin Entertainment. Nikyatu Jusu, whose 2022 psychological horror film Nanny won the Grand Jury Prize in the U.S. Dramatic Competition at Sundance, was attached to write and direct the new film. I feel Jusu fits the spirit of what Cronenberg tried to do with his own unmade sequel. Let me catch you up real quickly about her, because her work points to why she could be the right person for this. She made a short film called Suicide by Sunlight before Nanny, about black women who are day-walking vampires protected from the sun by their melanin. The short premiered at Sundance in 2019, and later Jordan Peele's Monkey Paw Productions and Universal became involved in developing a feature version. From her early work, Jusu has used genre to ask questions about bodies, identity, race, and trauma. That is exactly the kind of conversation The Fly has always been having through body horror. Producers at Chernin Entertainment, including Peter Chernin and Jenno Topping, were also on board, and the story was quickly shared by several entertainment outlets after Deadline's report. Every reliable outlet described it as a new film set in the universe of Cronenberg's 1986 film, not as a straightforward remake. This suggests a creative new direction without revealing too many details. Without repeating Seth Brundle's journey, the story could still be connected to the 1986 film, or at least share its core themes. It could pick up after The Fly 2, introduce a brand new scenario involving teleportation and mutation, or go somewhere else entirely. Nobody outside the project currently knows. Some outlets and fans have already started jokingly calling it the Brundleverse, which is funny but oddly perfect for The Fly. This is not like Alien, which is built on a huge mythology and an expansive universe. The premise of The Fly is much simpler. Teleportation can happen, and if it goes horribly wrong, your body may stop feeling like your own. That idea is scary because it can happen to anyone, in any setting, through any story. Jusu does not need Seth Brundle specifically. She just needs that premise and her own take on what it means to lose yourself inside your own skin. We are still in that phase where a filmmaker and a studio are attached, and the actual storytelling work is happening behind closed doors. Screen Rant noted that the new project could become the closest thing to the kind of sequel Cronenberg had once envisioned, at least in spirit. Jusu could do wonders with this universe because if you have seen Nanny, you know she understands how to use horror to explore grief, identity, and psychological pressure. By the way, Jusu is very busy. She has also been attached to the feature version of Suicide by Sunlight for Universal and Monkey Paw, and Deadline reported in 2022 that Amazon's MGM division was acquiring worldwide rights to a Night of the Living Dead sequel that she was set to direct. So of everything on her slate, The Fly project may be one of the most exciting, but it is still very much in early development. There is no confirmed cast, no plot synopsis, and no release date yet. You may ask why this is getting attention now. Well, because body horror has been on a generational run. The Substance became a major modern body horror success, earning over $77 million worldwide on a $17.5 million budget, and later receiving major awards attention, including an Oscar win for makeup and hairstyling. Those numbers are a loud signal to every studio that disturbing and uncompromising body horror can still attract attention. Cronenberg himself returned to the genre with Crimes of the Future, and in 2024 he premiered The Shrouds at Cannes, a deeply personal story about a widower who invents technology to watch his wife's body decompose in the grave. Very on brand for him. The point is, the man who created the most iconic Fly film is still actively making films about bodies, grief, and what technology does to both. 20th Century Studios has also recently been bringing back older horror and sci-fi franchises, with projects like Prey and Alien Romulus showing that there is still strong interest in long-running genre properties. Plus, choosing Jusoo instead of a purely safe commercial hire suggests that the studio may be taking the creative vision seriously. People often confuse these two separate stories as one, so remember this clearly. The first story is Cronenberg's oblique sequel, developed in the late 2000s and early 2010s, which Fox ultimately did not make. The second story starts in November 2024 with Nikyatu Jusoo's untitled film set in the universe of Cronenberg's The Fly. That project has a studio and producers, but it is still too early to be sure of anything beyond development. So, that is the full story of The Fly's long road back to the screen, at least as far as we know right now. We are finally at a point where the right filmmaker seems to be in place to do this universe justice. Now, I want to know something. Would you want Nikyatu Jusoo to continue directly from where The Fly 2 left off, or do something entirely new within the world? Drop your answer in the comments below, and if you are as excited about this as I am, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update.